Ofgem has announced the new price cap will go up to £3,459. National Energy Action predicts that will put 8.2 million people in fuel poverty from October. It's a huge jump. The price cap was £1,277 last winter and is currently set at £1,971. So let's get more on this. I'm joined now by Ofgem's Chief Executive, Jonathan Brearley. A very good morning to you, Jonathan Brearley. Some really tough news for people to be waking up to this morning. A price cap of £3,549 announced by you this morning. A historic rise in energy prices. People might be asking, what's the point of Ofgem if it can't protect its consumers?
Well, look, I talk to customers all the time, and I know that for many, many people, this will be devastating news this morning. But let me explain what's happening in the market and what's driving the changes that we're seeing. So after COVID last year, we saw lots of economies grow, particularly Asia, and that already put pressure on the gas market. And as we saw, prices began to spike in around September of last year. Now this year, over and above that, we have seen a slow and deliberate cut-off of gas by Russia to the European market, and that has made prices spike much, much further. When I look at the prices for winter now for buying the gas, they are 15 times what they normally are. Now, if that were to happen in petrol, that would mean it would cost us £400 to £500 to fill our car. So ultimately, the cost of energy is changing dramatically, and that's why the price cap needs to change, and that's why we are announcing the incredibly difficult news that it's going up to £3,549 today.
And yet, if you look at the Ofgem website, it does say that your role is to protect consumers by working to deliver a fairer energy system. But when you hear National Energy Action predicting that 8.2 million people will be in fuel poverty from October, people will feel that consumers aren't being protected.
Well, look, what we are also saying today is that the regulator has done everything that it can. The price cap was designed principally to do one thing, and that was to stop those retail companies charging unfair profits over and above the cost of the energy they need to buy. And those profits are around zero in the market today. But what we can't do is force companies to buy energy for less than it costs, because ultimately they won't be able to afford to buy the energy that we need. What we're saying today, though, is this is a big problem. This is a big problem for customers. Now, in 10 days' time, we will have a new administration, a new Prime Minister and a new set of ministers. And what we are saying to them today is we will need to work with you and the industry and NGOs, and there will need to be urgent and decisive action to tackle this problem. Because the difficult news we have today is that when I look out to winter and I look out to next year, there is continued significant increasing price pressure. So we all need to work together, but I am confident that if we do so, we will get through this for customers. But that will mean urgent and decisive action from the government.
What should that urgent and decisive action look like, do you think?
Well, we are working very, very closely with officials to make sure there are big choices available to ministers and the Prime Minister and the new ministerial team. Now, it's not my place as a regulator to lay those plans out. That needs to be done rightly by elected politicians. But we are all working very hard to make sure there are clear choices available for the new team in 10 days' time. We will work with government, as we are doing today. We will work with the industry and NGOs, as we are doing today. But this does need further intervention. Remember, when prices increased before, government did act. Government did put together a support package. What we are saying is, given these changes, all of that support needs to change, and we do need intervention that is urgent and decisive from government to make sure that customers are looked after this winter. We will play our part, but a regulator, the industry and the NGOs on their own won't fix this. We need to do this with the government.
Do you think the system needs to change? Is the energy price cap fit for purpose anymore when it rises so steeply so often?
Well, look, the price cap was designed to do one thing, and that was to make sure that those retail companies aren't charging what they used to charge. They used to charge up to 6, even 9% above the level that you're seeing today. Imagine that added on top of the bills that we are talking about today. What it can't do, though, is subsidise the cost of energy. That does need to be paid for through the market at the moment. What we do need to do is work with the government, work with NGOs, work with everyone to make sure that we can tackle this. I am confident that customers will get through this winter, but we do need to work together urgently and decisively to make that happen. There's a lot to do, but I'm confident that working together we can do this.
Apologies for interrupting. I mean, the way that the price cap is working at the moment looks like it's protecting the companies, the energy companies, at the expense of the consumer. Can you see how it's perceived to be like that? Is that how you see it?
Look, if I can understand why everyone today is feeling frustrated, incredibly worried, and probably incredibly angry. But the price cap has to reflect the legitimate costs in the market. Now, when I look at what's happening with the gas market, when I look, frankly, at what is being caused by the Russian shutdown of gas to Europe, the costs are there. They are massively increasing, and that does need to be reflected in the price cap. But what we're not doing today, which we used to do 5 or 6 years ago, is adding big profits for the retail companies on top of that. So it is doing its job, but all of us need to work together to do more, to make sure customers are protected, and to make sure ultimately, economically and for customers, we get through this winter and beyond.
But is the customer being put first here, given that the way that the announcement is made, it used to be twice a year, we're now going to get it every 3 months. There'll be another announcement of another rise in January, just when people are going through a winter and having to use more energy. The consumers' needs are not being thought through here, are they?
Well, we focus absolutely on consumer needs, but we all have to accept, as we saw last year, when companies fail, ultimately those costs fall back on consumers. So when we make our decisions, we make them thinking only about what cost falls on customers and how we best look after customers. Now, in this case, the price cap does need to change to adapt to a more volatile market. But ultimately, we need to work with government because we accept that what is there right now is not going to be enough to deal with the situation we're facing this winter. And that's really why we are saying there is a collective effort here that needs to be made. The regulator cannot change this on our own, the industry cannot change it on its own, the NGOs cannot change it on their own, but with government, working with the new administration and the new ministerial team, we can get ahead of this and make sure that customers are genuinely looked after this winter. It's really important that we see what is coming, and I accept today's rise is a big shock for many families, and we work together to tackle it. That's why we're asking the government, the new government, when it's in place in 10 days' time, to act urgently and decisively to make sure that we do offset the impacts, not just for customers, but for the economy as a whole.
Yesterday, we saw a forecast for the energy price cap to rise by next April to over £6,000. £6,823 was the forecast. Is that the kind of reality we have to face next year?
Well, look, I would treat any forecast for April with a huge amount of caution. I've seen the forecasts even for October. Although they were very accurate a few weeks ago, they were not accurate a few months ago. So I wouldn't hold on to any particular figure. But as I've said, when I look into the market, it is possible, and I emphasise this, it is possible that there is, for example, peace in Russia and Ukraine. This whole thing unwinds and prices may stabilise or fall, but it is much, much more likely that prices continue to rise. And what I wouldn't do, and what I caution anyone against doing, is saying what that figure would be for next April. It simply isn't credible at this stage. But yes, there is a big challenge ahead of us this winter. That's why all the agencies that are involved need to work together to act urgently and decisively to make sure that we can tackle this. So today, Ofgem is saying we need to work with others to tackle this for customers.
Is it true that you're working on plans to offer discounts to people who cut down their energy usage at peak times? And if so, how would that work?
Well, look, there was a great scheme run by part of National Grid and one of the energy companies that does say if we move our power, so if you remember, the highest demand for power is usually early in the morning when we're waking up, we're having our breakfast, and it's sort of 5 or 6 at night when many of us are cooking and many of us are getting home. Now, if we can shift that power, we can massively reduce the needs of the system. And what we are saying with that scheme is that if you do move the time you use your energy, you should get some money back. So I think that's a great scheme that may well help this winter, but a great scheme we should look to for the future. Because the more we can change things like that, the more we will make the whole system cost manageable and the whole system costs come down. And look, the way the country will get out of this situation ultimately is to reduce our dependence on the international gas market, create more homegrown energy, and build on the sorts of schemes that allow us to choose when we use our energy and indeed get discounts if we're able to move it away from those peaks. The future is really clear. What we've got to do is work to help customers through this winter.
OK, well, Jonathan Brearley, CEO Ofgem, thanks very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you.